All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about Van Morrison, a truly monumental and, let's be honest, a completely paradoxical figure in music history. For more than 50 years, he's been this source of just transcendent beauty. But at the same time, he's famously enigmatic, often a very difficult personality. And that paradox, it has never felt sharper or more urgent than it does right now. I mean, for decades, this was the story of Van Morrison. His 1968 album, Astral Weeks, it wasn't just another record, it was a seismic event in music. It's looked at as this high watermark of artistic expression, a piece of work that has an almost mythical status. This is the kind of masterpiece an artist builds their entire legacy on. And then there's this. This is how his most recent work has been described. The very same artist, now getting some of the most scathing reviews of his entire career. So what happened? How did we get here? How does the poet behind Astral Weeks become the guy getting slammed for, well, COVID lunacy? That's the conflict we're going to unpack. So to really understand the paradox, we have to start with the music itself, the stuff that made him a legend in the first place. And his art has been celebrated at the highest levels. We're talking about a knighthood, Grammys, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the whole shebang. The praise almost always comes back to his unrivaled integrity and vision, which puts him in this absolute top tier of songwriters. And his journey, it's just wild. He starts out with this raw garage rock fury in his band Them, and then he completely pivots into the radical poetry of Astral Weeks. He follows that up with the perfect, polished soul jazz of Moondance, then dives deep into his Irish roots, and then, much later, takes that controversial turn we just mentioned. It's a completely unpredictable career path. Astral Weeks is so special because it wasn't some meticulously planned album. It was pure, spontaneous creation. He brought in these world-class jazz musicians who barely knew him, gave them hardly any direction, and for 3 days, they just captured lightning in a bottle. The result is a sound that feels less like a bunch of songs and more like a single dreamlike state. It's a record that, as one critic so famously put it, deals in truths, not in facts. So, what do you even call this kind of music? Well, the term that's really stuck is Celtic soul. It's this incredible, almost alchemical fusion of his Irish heritage with all the American R&B, blues, and jazz he grew up loving. It's the absolute cornerstone of his artistry, and it's what makes his sound completely and utterly unique. Okay, so we have this artist who creates this profound, spiritual, timeless music. But that is only half the story. Let's pivot now from the celebrated art to the enigmatic and often very difficult artist himself. And this brings us to the man himself. From the very beginning, Morrison has built up this mystique. The persona of the cantankerous genius has been part of his identity for his entire career. It's a persona that's really built on a few key traits. He's intensely private, he has this deep distrust of the media, and his live shows could be absolutely transcendent one night and then bafflingly detached the next. It all feeds into this myth of the tortured artist, someone who is completely dedicated to the music and maybe at the expense of everything else. And this quote gives us such a fascinating glimpse into his process. Even with his deeply poetic lyrics, he says his legendary voice is just another instrument. He's not just telling you stories, he's creating sound, feeling, and texture. The words themselves become pure sound, a way to channel an emotion that goes way beyond language. So here's the crucial point. For decades, his famous grumpiness was just seen as part of his artistic integrity. But recently, that long-standing distrust of authority has morphed into something far more public and far more controversial. And I mean, the change is just staggering. The themes of his classic work, mysticism, nostalgia, a deep sense of place, they were universal and poetic. But his recent songwriting has completely shifted. It's become direct political commentary, anti-lockdown rants, media criticism, and claims of being enslaved by crooked facts. And this is where the controversy just ignited. He released these songs that were explicitly attacking pandemic health measures, with lyrics claiming scientists were just inventing facts. One song, called They Own the Media, drew widespread accusations of using anti-Semitic tropes. The backlash was severe, to the point where Northern Ireland's own health minister called the music dangerous. So that leaves us here. How do you possibly reconcile these two figures? The transcendent artist who gave us some of the most beautiful music of the 20th century, and the contentious public figure of the 21st. It's a profound, head-spinning contradiction. This has created what people are now calling a bifurcated legacy, which is really just a way of saying his legacy has been literally split in two. We're now forced to confront two very different versions of Van Morrison and try to grapple with how, or even if, they fit together. But here's the thing. Even with all the recent controversies, you just cannot erase this. His influence is everywhere. I mean, artists from Bruce Springsteen to Hozier to Sinead O'Connor have all drawn inspiration from his unique voice, his poetry, and his fierce artistic independence. This remains a core, undeniable part of his story. And so ultimately, we're left with this really difficult question. When the art offers transcendence, but the artist offers controversy, how do we process that? There's no easy answer, but it forces us all to think about how we separate the art from the artist and what it really means when a legacy is still being written and contested right before our very eyes.